So this video is all about the phases of the menstrual cycle. So we're going to go into a bit more scientific kind of talk around what the phases are, what hormones are involved, and how you might feel. But we're also going to talk about the water retention around each phase and the kind of another way that you can look at your phases of your cycle to help you understand why you feel certain ways and how you can kind of use that to your advantage rather than disadvantage. So first of all, here we have the 28-day cycle. So this is the image that we look at a lot because it's very clear, it's very easy. It's 28 days is the average, but that can vary from person to person. So today the phases we're going to look at are the period or menstruation, the follicular phase, ovulation, and the luteal phase. And these wiggly lines in the middle are the hormones, which we'll touch on as well. So, the phases of the cycle, the basics. So it starts with the first day of your period and ends with the start of your next period. The hormone signals are sent back and forth between the brain and the ovaries to determine what needs to happen, what action should be taken next to ensure the process is completed. The first part of the cycle prepares the egg to be released to the ovaries, and the second part, it prepares the body to either accept a fertilised egg or to start the next cycle if pregnancy doesn't happen. So the menstrual cycle, the first phase we have is menstruation. So this starts and finishes when you bleed. It starts when you first start bleeding and it stops when you finish bleeding. This is when the blood and tissue is shed from the body, and it lasts on average 5 to 6 days, but it can last up to 8 days. So again, this is where things vary from person to person, but generally it's 5 to 6 days. Next we have the follicular phase, which is this big dome here. So this starts from the beginning of your period and finishes at ovulation, around halfway through. So this is where the brain tells the ovaries to prepare an egg, and the pituitary gland in the brain produces FSH, which is this yellow line here, which stands for follicle stimulating hormone. So this hormone then kind of latches onto the largest follicle that the body has, and that follicle then begins to release estrogen. Then we move on to ovulation, which is generally around the middle of your cycle, but again, it can vary from person to person. The dominant follicle that we talked about before, that starts to, as it grows larger and larger, releases more and more estrogen. And as this happens, when the estrogen gets to a certain point, so estrogen here is the blue line, as it starts to get to a certain level, the brain starts to dramatically increase LH, which is this red line here, which stands for luteinizing hormone. So these two here, if you look at these two hormones are very high, and this is likely when you're going to be feeling strong, energetic, and horny as well. So these hormones are kind of your good hormones here. So at this point is when all these three hormones are at the highest, and that's when you're generally going to feel your best. Then we come into the luteal phase, which is the entire second part, so from ovulation until the start of your next period. This is where progesterone spikes around halfway through, so this dark browny line here, and this is kind of the negative hormones. This produces all hormonal changes that are common with PMS symptoms such as mood changes, acne, headaches, bloating and breast tenderness, as well as general lack of energy, food cravings, changes in appetite, stuff like that. So that is basically the phases of the menstrual cycle and how it works within your body, and you can kind of see where things happen. So let's talk about water retention. So here we have week 1, 2, 3 and 4, which represents the 28 days of your cycle. And week 1, days 1 to 7, this is when you have your least water retention. So as you see here, this is your menstruation here. So as your body sheds blood and tissue, it also releases water, and so your water retention is lower here. Then to counteract it, your water retention goes up in week 2, and then back down in week 3, and then finally back up in week 4, which is your PMS week. So as you can see, it changes every other week. So if you are weighing yourself from week 1 to week 2, week 3 and week 4 of your cycle, it's going to show very different weights on the scale. Water weighs something. So the more water you have in your body, it's going to determine how much different you weigh on the scale. So just be aware that your week 1 is going to look very different to your week 2 in terms of weight. And then it'll go to week 3 and week 4. Just because week 1 is low water retention and week 3 is low water retention doesn't mean they're going to be the same either. So you can only really compare week 1 of a cycle to another week 1 of a cycle. So let's just make you aware that if your food is exactly the same, your steps are exactly the same, your workouts are exactly the same, you will still show different weights on the scale because of your menstrual cycle, because of this natural process happens. It's nothing you've done wrong, it's just a natural process, and it's why that weight, especially in women, isn't the best way to judge your progress overall. Cool, and then this is something that I've learned about from a book. It's called Period Power, but basically it explains your period as the seasons. So phase 1 is your winter. You may feel a sense of relief when your period starts, but your energy is at its lowest, and you may feel introverted and introspective. So if you think about winter, you want to stay in all the time, the days are shorter, you need more rest, and you just feel less energetic. This is similar to when you're on your period. Phase 2, the follicular phase, which is your spring. So the rise in estrogen starts to lift your energy, your mood, and your brain skills. You start to feel more confident and powerful and willing to take risks. So if we go back to that image we showed of the menstrual cycle before, when those hormones start to rise, this is when you start to feel better, you start to feel more energetic, and you're starting to feel confident and powerful. This is often when you'll feel good in the gym as well, because you'll feel stronger and more confident about going heavier in the weights or pushing your speed faster on a run or something like that. This is when you're going to feel good. Then you have your ovulation, which is your summer. So your estrogen surge boosts all the positive effects from the spring, so you look and feel your most attractive. So this is when your body's trying to fertilize an egg. So you want to look good, you want to feel good, you want to be confident. So this is when your summer's when you feel really good. And then the phase 4, the luteal phase, is kind of your autumn and fall. So as your progesterone starts to increase, like I said, it's the one that the hormone doesn't make you feel so good. You find your energy winding down. In the second part of luteal phase, you may start to feel the PMS. So your body's preparing to go back into that winter. So in autumn, you're starting to be a bit less energetic, you get a little bit tired, you almost feel comforted by the colder evenings and early nights, and you may start getting cravings for comfort food, you might start feeling a bit irritable, as your body kind of prepares just in case you're pregnant. It goes into almost like a hibernation mode. So this is how we can look at the period in terms of how you feel in line with the seasons of the year. So hopefully that was helpful. Try to go a bit scientific, but also be a bit more relatable with how it might make you feel and how it can impact in your diet and training. But we're going to talk about those in more detail in the next couple of videos. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.